take care of my dad. You also want to be with dad, right?
This is what my husband told me. He left the house after leaving these words behind. I'm Isabel, 35 years old, and I'm a housewife. I have been married to my husband Lin, who is 8 years older than me, for 10 years. We don't have any children. Before getting married, I worked as a receptionist at a major company. My husband was also an employee at that company. Sometimes the receptionists were invited to the company's employee gatherings, and that's where I met my husband.
Isabel, this is the first time we're talking, isn't it? I work on the 8th floor. Did you know that?
By chance, we ended up sitting next to each other, and true to his sales profession, he was skilled at conversation and quite entertaining. During the gathering, he made me laugh a lot. As we talked, I found myself drawn to him. I thought that if I were with this person, we could live a life filled with laughter. Later, I heard that my husband had seen me when I was working as a receptionist and had been interested in me from the start. A week later, the two of us went out for drinks and started dating. During our relationship, wherever we went, we were always laughing. After 3 years of dating, we decided to get married. At his request, I became a housewife and quit my job as a receptionist. During the first few years of marriage, every day was enjoyable, and I was incredibly happy. I looked forward to my husband coming home, and it was a daily joy to eat the meals I cooked together and listen to my husband's stories.
When I eat your cooking, Isabel, all the fatigue from the day just disappears. Thank you so much always.
I had a very good relationship with both of my in-laws. My mother-in-law is kind and easygoing, and I have never experienced the stereotype mother-in-law mistreatment. She is a housewife with more experience than me and is excellent at cooking, so she often taught me. My father-in-law Kenny is a person who is good at talking, cheerful, and funny, just like my husband. He was intelligent and held a high position as an executive in his company. When we talked about our marriage life, we were envied by our friends because everything seems to be going smoothly for us. However, recently, my husband has been going on frequent business trips, and he always comes home late. Since his promotion, he had become busier than before, which was one factor. Additionally, it had become more frequent for him to come home after I had already gone to bed. We had almost lost the opportunity to have dinner together, and he had stopped making me laugh. One day, my mother-in-law passed away. Her pre-existing lung condition suddenly worsened. My father-in-law did his best to support her during the 6 months she was hospitalized. The two of them had a very close relationship. In the late hours on the day of the funeral, I saw my usually cheerful father-in-law silently crying in front of the mother-in-law's photo, and I couldn't stop my tears. Since my mother-in-law passed away, my father-in-law lost his energy. He was retired and living alone, so I worried about him, and I made it a habit to call him occasionally. I repeatedly told my husband that we should go visit him on our days off, but he declined, saying he was too busy. One day, my brother-in-law and his wife, who lived near my in-laws' house, came to our home.
I haven't told my brother about this until now, but something is off with Dad. I initially thought it was just because he hasn't been the same since Mom passed away, but his forgetfulness has become unusually severe. When I went to the hospital yesterday, he was diagnosed with dementia and certified as requiring care. Since we were worried about him living alone, we are considering living together with Dad. However, we both work, so we can't be with him 24/7. I wonder if there is any way you could help us occasionally?
I couldn't believe what my brother-in-law was saying. I knew that my father-in-law wasn't feeling well, but I had never realized that he had dementia just from our phone conversations. As I was about to offer my help, my husband spoke up first.
No, we're going to live with Dad. Don't worry about it. I'm the oldest son. Isabel is a housewife, so she can with him all the time. I will help too. Let's take care of Dad together. Isabel, is that okay with you?
I was caught off guard by how quickly the conversation had escalated, so I hadn't quite organized my thoughts yet. I have never had experience with caregiving. While I might be able to help occasionally, I wondered if I would be able to be there constantly by his side. I had many concerns, but deep down, I had prepared myself for the possibility that one day, as the wife of the oldest son, such a day would come. Above all, I wanted to be of assistance to my father-in-law, who had taken care of me all this time. So I made the decision to live together. I will be fine. After all, I have received a lot of help from Kenny all this time. After giving that response, a few weeks later, my father-in-law started living with us.
I apologize for any inconvenience. If I ever say something foolish, feel free to get angry at me.
That's what my father-in-law said to us. We made the decision to live together, but caregiving turned out to be more challenging than we had imagined. My husband is rarely home, leaving me alone with my father-in-law. His symptoms are still mild, and he recognizes us properly. However, he often buys the same items repeatedly and frequently misplaces his keys and wallet. There are good days and bad days, but when he goes out, he tends to come back having lost something, so I accompany him whenever possible. My father-in-law, perhaps feeling guilty for constantly needing my assistance, sometimes seizes the opportunity when I'm busy with housework to go out alone. When he returns safely without losing anything, I feel relieved. However, when we went shopping together yesterday, he bought eggs again, not realizing that he had already bought them before. After that, for the following 3 days, he went out alone, and each time he bought eggs again. It made me realize that from now on, I absolutely had to accompany him. My husband comes home late every day, often after my father-in-law has already gone to bed. Since we started living together, his business trips have increased even more. He doesn't ask about my father-in-law's well-being or engage in conversation. I have many stories about my father-in-law that I want my husband to listen to. But whenever I try to talk to him about it, when he comes home, he always makes excuses like being tired and doesn't listen at all. The fact that he doesn't even listen to me was quite stressful for me. Even when he is occasionally off and at home, he doesn't make much effort to interact with my father-in-law. There are even times when he ignores my father-in-law when he tries to start a conversation. One day, while I was hanging up the laundry,
Dad has gone out.
Despite my expressed desire not to let him go out alone, my husband casually informed me without any intention of helping. He had no intention of assisting me at all, and I was dumbfounded. One day, my husband, who was always late getting home, came home in the evening. I had been feeling stressed by my husband, but I was happy that he came home early. However, when he returned,
I suddenly need to go on a long-term business trip starting from tomorrow, so I have to prepare.
He began packing his belongings into a large suitcase.
Where are you going on the business trip? How long will you be gone?
My father-in-law asked, but my husband didn't answer and continued with his preparations. Judging by the amount of luggage, it seemed like he would be away for more than a week, possibly even traveling abroad. While he was getting ready, my father-in-law fell asleep. As I was washing the dishes, my husband finished his preparation, came out of the shower, and sat at the dining table.
Once you're done, Isabel, come and sit as well.
I was called by my husband. He might be absent for a while starting from tomorrow, but I was somewhat happy at the thought of being able to have a leisurely conversation with my husband after a long time. However, my husband started saying something unbelievable.
I want a divorce. I've been having an affair. The other person also had a spouse, but they finally broke up. So let's separate too. I'm going to marry that woman. Starting tomorrow, it won't be a business trip. We'll go on a trip to celebrate our separation.
I thought it was a bad joke when I saw him continue to talk nonchalantly and unintelligibly. Huh? You were joking, right? Stop it. This isn't like you. It's not funny, I said. And then,
No, I wouldn't joke about something like this. I've fallen in love with someone other than you. Please sign this and send it back to me.
and my husband continued in a detached manner and handed me a divorce papers. Once I realized it wasn't a joke, I became flustered. Since when had he been having an affair? My husband has a busy job, often coming home late and going on frequent business trips. I never questioned it at all. Perhaps all those reasons were just lies to meet his affair partner. I felt angry at myself for not noticing anything at all. During the time I was taking care of his dad, he might have been enjoying himself with his affair partner. With that thought, tears started flowing. Don't joke around. I can't just forgive something like that. What about Kenny? I shouted at my husband while crying.
I will still rely on you to take care of that. Dad loves you more than me, right? You seem happy when you're with Dad, don't you? Even if I'm not here, you won't be lonely with Dad around, right? I will at least provide the minimum living expenses. I'm asking you.
My husband completely ignored all of my emotions and said with a refreshed expression,
Wouldn't you be fine with your father-in-law around? I will provide the living expenses.
Did he think that saying would make me agree? I was so enraged that I couldn't control myself. Please stop saying stupid things. If I divorce you, Kenny won't need family anymore, right? I have no obligation to take care of him. My husband suggested that we take care of his father, but he never lifted a finger to help and left everything to me. I do love my father-in-law, of course. However, caregiving felt like a daily battle. I kept crying and screaming at my husband, remembering the difficult days we went through. Don't you dare joke about it. You have no idea about the difficulties of caregiving. Seeing me upset, my husband said,
Calm down. It's already decided, so crying won't change anything. We can't talk in this state. Let's discuss it again tomorrow.
And with that, he went to the bedroom. I kept shouting at my husband as he headed towards the bedroom, but he didn't even look back. It had been years since I cried this much. Even after my husband was gone, I continued to cry for a while. I realized I had cried myself to exhaustion and ended up falling asleep on the sofa. When I woke up, it was 5 in the morning. By then, my husband was no longer in the house. On the dining table, there was a divorce document and a note.
Please sign it and send it. Take care of Dad. Thank you for everything. Goodbye.
that was written on the note. I couldn't understand the meaning, and I cried out again. Then, my father-in-law woke up and was surprised to see me crying.
Isabel, what's wrong? What happened?
Please take a look at this. I showed the note and divorce papers to my father-in-law and told him everything that happened last night. As he listened, my father-in-law also shed tears. He loved my mother-in-law deeply. He had never even considered the thought of infidelity. And there was a time when my father-in-law and I talked about how we couldn't forgive someone who cheats while watching a drama. It might have been a shock for my father-in-law to learn that his own son was doing such a thing. And after listening to the whole story, my father-in-law began to speak to me slowly.
Isabel, I'm incredibly grateful to you. More than words can express. I cannot forgive him. I don't want to let it end like this. Would you let me handle it?
As I looked at my father-in-law speaking, his eyes were filled with honesty. It felt like his usual self, as if his dementia had been cured.
First, gather solid evidence of their infidelity and find out where they are. Hire a private detective for that.
Upon hearing my father-in-law's words, I felt a strong sense of support. I couldn't keep crying. I had to fight back. Following my father-in-law's advice, I left the house and headed to the detective agency. I'm not sure how many days they will be on their trip, but they should be back soon as they have work commitments, I informed the detective. A few days later, I received a call from the detective. They provided me with numerous photos of my husband walking with the other woman and entering a house together, along with information about his whereabouts. The other woman appeared to be around 25 years old and seems to be unemployed. I was surprised by the significant age difference and couldn't help but feel disgusted by my husband's actions. When I returned home and reported the finding to my father-in-law, he said,
Well done. I'm going to go there now. You will be fine on your own. Isabel, you must be tired, so have a rest.
With those words, my father-in-law headed towards a house where my husband was apparently living with his affair partner. It was a weekday afternoon, and my husband wasn't at work. When my father-in-law arrived at the house, the woman came out.
Nice to meet you. I'm the father, and I came to see my son. I have dementia, and my previous daughter-in-law used to take care of me. From now on, I will be taken care of by his new wife, right? I would like to set a date for the move.
At first, the woman greeted my father-in-law with a friendly smile. However, when she heard the words dementia and caregiving, she responded by saying, Who are you? I have nothing to do with this, and sent him away. When my father-in-law returned home, he told me to contact my husband's workplace next. Excuse me, I'm his wife. My husband said he's going to see his mistress and hasn't come back yet. Is he at work? I told the woman on the phone in a blunt manner. I'm sorry, Lynn is currently out of the office. Would you like me to have him call you back? I was told. Please do. I told her and hung up. I was very nervous, but my father-in-law, who was listening next to me, praised me after the call ended. And a few hours later, my husband called. As soon as I answered the phone,
What the hell are you thinking? Calling my workplace? Are you out of your mind? You should have called my cell phone instead. I've already given you the divorce papers. We are getting divorced, so there's no cheating or anything, he said. Because of you, it seems like there are rumors circulating in the office. I heard it from one of the office workers with a smug look on their face. Don't mess around.
It seems like our plan was a great success. Upon hearing the panicked words of my husband, I deliberately maintained a calm tone and responded, "Oh, wasn't it goodbye? I know we were getting divorced. I'm fine with you not contacting me." With that, I hung up the phone. Even this response was instructed by my father-in-law. My husband, in a state of panic, looked quite ridiculous, and I and my father-in-law shared a laugh. And that night, my husband returned home. My father-in-law was already asleep. After I hung up the phone, and he kept calling multiple times, I thought he still had something to say. But as soon as he returned, he apologized at the entrance.
I made a regrettable mistake in a moment of confusion. You haven't filed for divorce, right? Please stay with me after all. Please continue to take care of me from now on. Thank you.
I couldn't help but burst out laughing. He had shrunk so much that it was hard to believe he had been so confident until the evening. So the other person hadn't separated from her husband, right? She seemed surprised to hear that your father has dementia. So what? We are still getting a divorce. My husband has a surprised expression upon hearing my words.
You? How do you know about that?
Kenny spoke with that woman. Oh, it was also Kenny's idea to call the company. I've already found a lawyer, so let's meet at the courthouse. I'm going to demand a substantial amount of compensation. Take care. Well then, goodbye. As I said that, my husband had an unbelievably shocked expression on his face. I proceeded to kick my husband out of the house right then and there. I felt a great sense of relief. While taking a shower, I couldn't help but laugh repeatedly as I recalled the sight of my husband's kneeling. The next morning, when I informed my father-in-law, who had just woken up, that my husband had returned.
If you had woken me up, I would have shouted at him too.
He told me laughing. While we were having that conversation, my brother-in-law arrived. It seems like my father-in-law had called him.
I apologize for my brother's rude behavior.
He apologized to me.
We will take care of that at our home. I understand that you will face difficulties with upcoming trial, but I will do my best to support you as much as possible.
My father-in-law also conveyed to me.
I apologize once again for my son's actions. Perhaps I have raised him incorrectly. You have a very kind woman. Please, find happiness.
He said this and firmly grabs my hand. I can't forgive my husband, and I no longer love him. But I have nothing but gratitude towards my in-laws aside from my husband. I truly felt fortunate to have met these people. Subsequently, the trial took place, and the photos obtained by the detective became decisive evidence, allowing me to successfully claim compensation. When I informed my father-in-law and brother-in-law about the divorce being finalized, they were extremely happy. It seems that my father-in-law, who takes medication, has mild cognitive impairment that hasn't worsened, and my brother-in-law is also relieved. I heard from the lawyer that my husband is also being sued by the cheating partner's spouse. I heard that my husband had a hard time at work because of the phone call I made and ended up quitting his job. Although I'm worried about whether I will receive proper compensation, I felt like he had been punished. As for myself, I started working as a housekeeper. I visit the homes of elderly people who live alone and assist with household chores. Being a full-time housewife for many years and not having worked for 10 years, I was very anxious about whether I could work properly. However, thanks to my in-laws, I'm very skilled in the household chores and can also provide some caregiving assistance. It's a perfect job for me, and it's going quite well. Moments when I receive thanks from the families I visit as a housekeeper makes me incredibly happy, despite everything that has happened.
I'll cook dinner tonight, my husband said with a smile, coming home earlier than usual. It was eerie. Lately, he had been acting strangely, but suddenly he was being kind. Look, you're pregnant and must be going through a lot. Even though I'm busy, I should do some housework too, he said cheerfully as he put on his apron. I shouldn't doubt my husband's good intentions, but I couldn't help it. I tried to ignore my suspicions and took a bite of the curry he served. As soon as I did, I collapsed in pain. And then I saw something that must have been used in the cooking. Unbelievable. Just before losing consciousness, I saw my husband's face. My name is Naomi, just an ordinary office worker. My husband Devin and I are colleagues in the same department. We started dating after bonding over common hobbies and got married 2 years ago. Well, I'll be going, he said, avoiding eye contact and seeming awkward. Will you be late tonight? I don't know, probably. As he left, I unconsciously put my hand on my belly. I'm 9 weeks pregnant. I've been on leave from work since the morning sickness got worse. I can still picture my husband's face when I told him about the pregnancy. He was overjoyed like a child with tears in his eyes as he hugged me, thanking me. I vividly remember us laughing together after accidentally knocking over a cup full of coffee when he stood up too quickly. Despite all this, he has been coming home late from work lately. Before, he used to come home by 8 p.m. at the latest, perhaps out of concern for my health. But recently, he often comes home past 10 or 11 p.m. I've tried asking him about it indirectly, but he dodges the question and I don't know the real reason. I know him well. He's sincere and kind, always putting me first. When I first started taking time off work, he made time for us to talk, even when he was tired. But lately, our conversations have felt distant. Seeing his attitude, I couldn't help but think of a word I didn't want to consider. Cheating. No, that can't be. But the more I thought about it, the more I couldn't shake the thought. Then an event occurred that turned my suspicions into certainty. One day while we were chatting and watching TV together, a celebrity cheating scandal came up on a talk show. Already sensitive to the word, I felt a cold shiver down my spine. My heart raced with an unpleasant pulse, and I was somehow afraid to look at my husband's face. The show's topic shifted to whether friendships between men and women can exist, and I forced a laugh, trying not to seem strange by suddenly falling silent. What do you think, Devin? About friendships between men and women? There was no answer to the question I threw out, without turning my gaze from the screen. I regretted it, and when I glanced at him, his cheerful expression visibly clouded over. Can we not talk about that? With an awkward, evasive smile, I became convinced. I knew it. He's cheating on me. From the day I had that conversation with my husband, I felt a heavy weight in my stomach. The morning sickness made my mood and physical condition even worse. What should I do now? Confront him? What would happen then? Would he dodge the issue as he always does, or would he confess to the affair resignedly? Either way, it would be painful. Should I continue living as we have been, burdened by this unbearable suspicion? No, I couldn't do that. What was more painful was the sudden wave of nausea. I rushed to the bathroom, unable to stop thinking while crouching. The thought of him no longer loving me or needing me was unbearable. At that time, I heard the front door open. I hurried to the entrance and saw my husband taking off his shoes, apparently having rushed home. It was just past 7 p.m. When was the last time he came home this early? Welcome back. What's up? You're home pretty early tonight. Yeah, I really wanted to come home early today. He hurried down the hallway looking somewhat happy. Seeing his face like that for the first time in a while, I felt a little happy too. As he walked halfway down the hallway, he suddenly turned to me as if remembering something. I'll cook dinner tonight. Surprised by his words, I watched him enter the kitchen with enthusiasm. A little later, he served curry and a beautifully arranged salad. Before I could ask what was going on, he urged me to eat with an untroubled smile. With that innocent, boyish face disarming me, I said thank you and took a bite of curry. That's when I lost consciousness. I thought I heard his tense voice and the sound of an ambulance siren. When I opened my eyes, I saw a white ceiling and realized I wasn't at home. The smell of disinfectant and people talking. I was in a hospital. Hearing a loud noise, I looked over and saw my worried husband getting up from his chair. He repeatedly apologized and held my hand tightly. According to him, I had collapsed after eating the curry and was rushed here by ambulance. When I had calmed down a bit, the doctor in charge came and shared the results of the examination. There was no immediate danger to my life, and it seemed that our baby was unharmed. Upon hearing that the baby was safe, I felt so relieved that it was as if all the strength had left my body. The doctor said that the main cause of my collapse was excessive stress. Indeed, my morning sickness had been particularly severe lately, and I had been worrying about my husband's suspected affair, which I thought might be one of the factors. But was that really all there was to it? Could I actually collapse the moment I put curry into my mouth just because of stress? A doubt crossed my mind. What was in the curry that my husband made for me? The morning after I spent the night at the hospital and was discharged, I checked the ingredients of the curry he had made for me when I returned home. As expected, there was no way he would leave something that I had an abnormal reaction to, and the pot that probably contained the curry was washed clean. While recalling what I saw on the dining table the night before, I checked the condition of the remaining vegetables in the refrigerator. But there was nothing strange about any of them. What could be the cause then? I wondered as I looked inside the refrigerator again and noticed an unfamiliar container. I picked it up and checked the contents. That night when my husband came home late, I started the conversation by saying, "There's something I need to talk to you about." I brought up the container I found in the refrigerator and another one. "It's unusual for you to stay up this late waiting for me. You couldn't sleep?" "Well, no, there's that, but..." I gripped my slightly trembling hand tightly. I hadn't been this nervous since my job interview at the company. Are you cheating on me?" I mustered up all the courage I had and spat out the source of my recent anxiety. The pathetic, trembling words faded away and silence filled the room. The sound of the clock's hands moving seemed strangely loud. "Huh?" With a surprised look on his face, my husband let out a dumbfounded voice. In conclusion, my husband's infidelity turned out to be my groundless worry. Actually, he hesitantly told me the story, which went like this. Before I went on maternity leave, I had a good relationship with a female coworker named Melissa. Every day, she would ask my husband for help with work or for explanations of things she didn't understand for various reasons. That's why he couldn't go home even when he wanted to. "She's your friend, right? I can't refuse her, and it's hard for me to talk to you about it, too." So that's what was happening. Realizing that it wasn't an affair, I felt relieved from the bottom of my heart. At the same time, my dissatisfaction with Melissa began to bubble up. Since we were doing the same job, of course we would help each other out as co-workers. But it seemed unreasonable to manipulate people for one's own convenience every day and night. Moreover, it seemed strange that she had so much work to do that she had to work overtime every day. Even when I was still working with her, she had this tendency. At first, she would be relaxed, saying, "This is no big deal." But when the deadline approached, she would cry for help. Apparently, her attitude hasn't changed even now. "I'm sorry for worrying you," my husband said with a smile, trying to comfort me. I felt so happy with this kindness that I wanted to cry. Then I suddenly remembered the container and took it out. "And one more thing, what's this about?" That. I got it from her the other day. Melissa had apparently asked him for help with work as usual on the day he got it. But Naomi's not feeling well today, so I'm sorry." "Oh, really? That's too bad." She then said, "Oh, I have something nice for you," and took something out to hand over. It was this container. The contents appeared to be homemade curry roux. It's true, I have been surprised to hear that she was into organic products, disliking preservatives and sweeteners, and even making her own soap in addition to cooking and baking. She said it's good for both the mom and baby. "I'd be over the moon if I can help you, Naomi." "Aw, honey." That's why he rushed home so quickly that day. I felt ashamed for suspecting infidelity. He cared so much for me, and we were able to confirm our bond and resolve the issue. However, I couldn't help but be concerned about the curry roux. When I opened the lid and smelled it, something felt off. Of course, the scent can change depending on the spices used, but once I started worrying, I couldn't stop. So I decided to send it for an allergy test. A few days later, the allergy test results arrived. Melissa's attitude towards my husband and this curry roux made me certain of her intentions. Among the various numbers listed, there was one with abnormally high value: peanuts. I have had a peanut allergy since I was a child. I once ate peanuts as a child, and my throat swelled up so much that I had difficulty breathing, and I had to be taken to the hospital. Since then, I have always checked for peanuts or their ingredients in the food I buy. I had told Melissa about this in the past, so she should know. She's really done it, I thought, crushing the paper with the test results in my hand. Was I the only one who thought we were friends? Did she become close to me from the beginning just to get close to my husband? That alone would have been fine, but trying to harm me without getting her hands dirty and trampling on my husband's kindness is unforgivable. What welled up in me was not sadness or fear, but intense anger. I crumpled up the paper with all my strength and threw it into the trash can with a roar. "If you're going to do this to me, I'll get you back. I'll return the favor twice over." A few days after that resolution, in the middle of a peaceful afternoon, a shrill intercom tone, followed by the sound of someone violently pounding on the front door, ripped through the air. Knowing who the person at the door was, I smirked and pressed the intercom's respond button. "Yes, who is it?" "Hey, Naomi, what the hell is this?" As expected, Melissa was there, her face pale and panting, interrupting my words. "What are you talking about?" I asked innocently, and she slammed some documents against the intercom camera. "What the hell is this claim for damages? What have I done?" It seemed she had only read the title and not the contents. Did she even remember what she had done? "Oh, you don't remember? I guess I'll have to remind you then." I played the audio from the voice recorder I had been holding up to the intercom's microphone. "Why did you suddenly call me here?" Actually, there's something I wanted to tell you." From the voice recorder, the voices of my husband and Melissa could be heard. I could tell that she was holding her breath as she listened. "Oh? What is it?" "I'm getting nervous." "Actually, it's a bit hard to say, but..." "You can tell me anything. I like you." "Huh?" After a brief silence, she changed her tone and asked, "Really?" My husband replied in a serious tone. Yes. He somehow managed to say the lines we had thought up together, even though he sounded somewhat theatrical. When that was over and there was a brief silence, Melissa's voice, whispering, "I'm so happy," could be heard. "But I'm with Naomi now, so I can't be with you." My husband seemed to turn on his heel after saying that was all he wanted to say. From a short distance away, her voice called out, "Wait!" The sound of her high heels hurriedly clacking could be heard. "I have a good idea," she said. "You remember the curry roux I gave you before, right? Use that." "I don't see what you're getting at. What do you mean?" "Naomi apparently has a severe peanut allergy. I heard she had a terrible experience as a child, so if you put that in the cooking and have her eat it, it could send her to the hospital. And if things go really well..." At that moment, a shrill voice from the intercom speaker drowned out the recorded voice. With a demonic expression on her face, Melissa pounded on the door, demanding, "Open the door!" Watching her with cool eyes, I thought, what a nuisance to the neighbors. Having decided to counterattack her, I told my husband everything that had happened. He was enraged, and I told him the elaborate revenge scenario that I had devised. Then, as planned, I had my husband play a trick on Melissa, and we obtained solid evidence of what she had done. We immediately went to a lawyer we knew and had a letter of settlement negotiation sent. That letter arrived at her place today. Finally giving up on getting the door opened, she spat out her anger with a rough breath. "Don't you feel ashamed doing such a cowardly thing behind my back? Don't mess with me. I'm just returning the favor. You're the one who started it." "Shut up. I've always hated that part of you. You stole my Devon right out from under me. You bitch." Well, I don't care what a woman who forces such a thing on my husband says. My unyielding attitude seemed to add fuel to the fire, and her voice grew even louder. "Just so you know, I never considered you a friend. Besides, a woman like you doesn't deserve him. Your ugly face is so embarrassing to look at." Ignoring her continuous results, I calmly called the police. As the neighbors who had heard the commotion watched, Melissa was taken away by the police officers who arrived shortly after. I went to the hospital again just to be sure, and there were indeed no abnormalities found in either me or the baby. Furthermore, it turned out that my collapse was not due to an allergic reaction, but to stress. If the timing had been slightly off, I might have ended up eating that curry. If that had happened, things might have been much worse. The thought sent shivers down my spine. After that, Melissa was fired from her job. Due to the commotion she caused by coming all the way to my house, her misdeeds spread throughout the company, and she is now said to be living a lonely life surrounded by whispers of her bad reputation. As for me, I safely gave birth to a healthy baby boy and returned to work. Now my husband, our baby, and I are living happily together.